When I walked into the Christmas party, my sister-in-law announced, "Open all the windows, the Indian has arrived." She said it in front of the entire family while holding the expensive perfume set I'd bought her, and my husband Kevin just sat there silently while his mother laughed and said at least someone was addressing the elephant in the room. She put the gift aside without thanking me and went back to opening presents from other people. "There's no smell problem. I shower twice a day and wear deodorant." Ashley laughed and looked at everyone for support. "All Indians say that, but we can still smell you. It's in your pores from all that disgusting food. The spices leak out of your skin." Her husband Tom nodded along. "Ashley's right. We have to air out the house for days after you visit." We'd been there 10 minutes and I'd brought homemade cookies, not Indian food. "I made snickerdoodles. There's no curry involved." Kevin's mother jumped in. "But you cook it at home. The smell sticks to you. It's embedded in your clothes, your hair, everything. Poor Kevin must be nose blind by now." Kevin still said nothing, just unwrapped his presents. "I use unscented laundry detergent and fragrance-free shampoo. If anything smells, it's not coming from me." Ashley stood up and walked past M.E., dramatically holding her nose. "See, I can smell it from here. That distinctive Indian stench, like rotting spices and body odor." She was wearing so much perfume it mad. My eyes water, but apparently, I was the problem. "Ashley, you haven't showered in 3 days. You mentioned it when we arrived." She got defensive. "I don't need to shower daily. White people don't have the same oils. We're naturally cleaner." She said this with greasy hair and visible food stains on her Christmas sweater. "That's not how biology works." Kevin's father Richard laughed. "Don't argue with her about cleanliness. You people have different standards. Ashley understands real hygiene." Ashley nodded proudly. "Exactly. I use dry shampoo. Very European. Indians wouldn't understand because you're all about excess. Too much food, too much smell, too much everything." Her son Jason, who was 8, repeated what he'd clearly heard before. "Mom says we can't visit your house because it smells like dirty people." Even the child was trained. "We've never invited you to our house." Ashley smirked. "Obviously. You know we'd be disgusted, probably have curry handprints on the walls and that ethnic smell everywhere." Kevin's mother added, "I told Kevin before he married you that mixed marriages are hard because of these cultural differences. The smell issue alone should have been a deal breaker." I looked at Kevin, waiting for him to say something, but he was checking his phone. "Your son's wife is being racially attacked and you're silent?" He shrugged. "It's Christmas. Don't make drama." Ashley jumped on that. "See? Drama. Another Indian trait. Everything's so dramatic and loud with your people. Can't just accept facts." The fact apparently being that I smelled despite showering twice daily, while Ashley considered 3-day-old sweat European elegance. "I'm going to the bathroom." I needed space before I said something I'd regret. When I opened the bathroom door, the smell hit me immediately. Mold everywhere. Towels that hadn't been washed in weeks. Soap scum so thick it was black. Ashley's makeup bag was open and everything was expired and crusty. I took photos of everything. The toilet that hadn't been cleaned in months. The trash overflowing with used products. The bathtub with a brown ring. This was their guest bathroom that Ashley was supposedly responsible for. I came back to the living room where Ashley was explaining to Kevin's aunt how hard it was having an Indian sister-in-law. "The smell follows her everywhere. I feel bad for Kevin having to sleep next to that every night. Probably has to wash the sheets daily." Kevin's aunt looked uncomfortable. "Ashley, maybe that's enough." But Ashley wasn't done. "Someone has to say it. We all think it. Indians smell bad. It's not racist, it's science. Their food, their hygiene, their culture. All of it creates this distinctive stench." Tom backed her up. "Ashley bought special air fresheners just for when they visit. Industrial strength. They hadn't visited us once in 5 years of marriage. Your bathroom has black mold." Everyone turned to look at me. Ashley went red. "What were you doing snooping in my bathroom?" Kevin's mother stood up. "Black mold? That's dangerous." I showed them the photos on my phone. The bathroom smells like sewage and mildew. The towels are growing things. There's makeup from 2015 still being used. Ashley tried to grab my phone. "You had no right to document my private space." Richard looked at the photos. "Ashley, this is disgusting. You said you cleaned yesterday for Christmas." Ashley was panicking. "It's not that bad. She's exaggerating because I told the truth about Indian smell." Kevin's aunt, who'd been quiet, spoke up. "I've used that bathroom. That smell is definitely mold, not spices." She pulled out her phone and held it up. "Can you send me those photos? This is a serious health hazard that needs reporting." Richard tried to wave her off and told her she was making a big deal out of nothing, but she kept her phone out and waited for me to send the pictures. Ashley lunged at my phone again, trying to grab it out of my hands. Tom caught her arm and held her back, his face suddenly worried as other family members crowded around to see the photos on my screen. Kevin's mother leaned in close and her face went completely white when she saw the images. I watched her realize that her daughter's bathroom looked like a biohazard while she'd spent the last hour attacking me for imaginary smells. She stepped back and put her hand over her mouth. I sent the photos to Kevin's aunt and watched Ashley start talking fast about being too busy with Jason to clean properly. She kept saying she had a lot going on, and sometimes things got behind schedule. Tom jumped in, claiming they were planning to renovate soon anyway, so it didn't really matter. Kevin's father looked at the photos on his wife's phone and asked why they were spending money on new furniture if the bathroom was falling apart. Tom's face got red and he said the furniture was a different budget. Ashley started crying and said everyone was ganging up on her when she was just being honest about facts. Kevin finally spoke up, but only to suggest we all calm down and discuss this reasonably after the holidays. I turned and looked directly at him. You're seriously suggesting I stay silent about being racially attacked for an hour while your sister's actual filth gets excused as too busy? He wouldn't meet my eyes and mumbled something about not making Christmas awkward for everyone. That's when I understood. My husband of 5 years just told me his family's comfort at a holiday party mattered more than my basic human dignity. 5 years of marriage and he was more worried about awkward Christmas dinner than his wife being called dirty and disgusting for an hour straight. I grabbed my purse off the couch. I'm leaving. You can either come with me now or stay with your family, but I'm done pretending this is normal. Kevin hesitated. Actually hesitated. He looked between me and his mother, who was shaking her head slightly at him. His own mother was telling him not to leave with his wife, and he was considering it. I stood there holding my purse and coat, waiting to see what he would choose. The room got completely quiet except for Ashley sniffling. Kevin's mother tried a different approach. She said I was being dramatic and they were just joking around like families do. I pointed at Ashley and then at Tom and Richard. Joking about my race, my hygiene, and my culture for an hour straight while I brought gifts and cookies isn't humor. It's cruelty. Kevin's mother said I was too sensitive and couldn't take a joke. Ashley nodded and said some people just couldn't handle honesty. Ashley started crying harder, claiming I'd ruined Christmas by attacking her when she was just being honest. Kevin's aunt cut her off sharply. Honesty would be admitting that 3-day-old sweat and black mold smell worse than any spice. You need to stop playing victim. Ashley's mouth fell open and she looked at her mother for support. Kevin's mother told the aunt she was being harsh, and Ashley was just expressing her opinion. The aunt said Ashley's opinion was racist and disgusting, and the bathroom photos proved who actually had hygiene problems in this family. I walked out to my car and sat in the driver's seat. My hands were shaking, so hard I could barely get the key in the ignition. I waited to see if Kevin would follow me. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I looked at the front door of the house and saw the lights on inside and shadows moving past the windows. He wasn't coming. I started the engine and understood that his silence in there was actually his answer all along. 5 years of staying quiet while his family attacked me wasn't going to change. This was who he was. Kevin rushed out as I was backing up the driveway. He knocked on my window and asked where I was going. I rolled down the window. I'm going somewhere I'm treated like a human being. You need to decide if that's something you actually want for your wife, or if your family's approval matters more. He said I was overreacting and we could talk about this at home. I told him there was nothing to talk about, because he'd already made his choice by sitting silent for an hour while I got attacked. He said he didn't want to cause family drama during Christmas. I put the car in reverse and told him he'd caused plenty of drama by marrying someone his family would treat like garbage while he watched. He climbed into the passenger seat and I started driving toward our apartment on the other side of town. The silence filled every inch of space between us. His phone kept lighting up with incoming messages, and he typed responses constantly. I watched him from the corner of my eye at each red light. His thumbs moved fast across the screen and his face stayed blank like he was texting about the weather instead of what just happened. We pulled into our parking garage 20 minutes later and I still hadn't heard his voice. He got out and walked to the elevator without looking back to see if I was following. Inside our apartment, he went straight to the bedroom while I stood in the kitchen. My hands were still shaking from the drive. I pulled out my laptop and logged into our phone account online. The records loaded and I scrolled through his texts from the past hour. Every single message went to his mother. Not one text to me. Not one word of apology or explanation. Just him telling her I overreacted and made a scene and ruined Christmas for everyone. He wrote that I embarrassed him in front of his whole family. He promised her we would work it out and I would calm down eventually because I always did. I closed the laptop and sat there staring at the kitchen counter. 5 years of marriage and this was what I got. His loyalty went to the people who called me dirty and disgusting. I thought about all the other times his family said things and he stayed quiet. The comments about my food at Thanksgiving. The jokes about my accent at Easter. The suggestions that I was too emotional or too sensitive or too dramatic. Every single time he told me later that I needed to understand they came from a different generation. That they didn't mean anything by it. That I should just let it go because family was family. But he never once told them to stop. He never once defended me or set a boundary or said their behavior was wrong. He just expected me to absorb it all and smile and bring homemade cookies to the next gathering. The bedroom door opened and Kevin came out in sweatpants and a t-shirt. He walked past me to the fridge and pulled out orange juice. He poured himself a glass and drank it while standing there. Then he looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time since we got home. He asked if I wanted to order pizza for dinner. Just like that. Like we hadn't just left his family's house after the worst hour of my life. Like his sister hadn't spent 60 minutes telling me I smelled bad because of my race. Like his mother hadn't laughed along and agreed. Like he hadn't sat there silent through all of it. I told him I wasn't hungry. He shrugged and said he was going to watch TV then. He grabbed the remote and turned on a basketball game. The sound filled the apartment and he settled into the couch like it was any other night. I went to the bedroom and closed the door. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my phone. I had 3 texts from Renata asking if I was okay. She knew I was going to Kevin's family Christmas party, and she knew how his family treated me. I typed back that I needed to stay at her place for a few days. She responded immediately saying her guest room was ready whenever I needed it. I thanked her and said I would come by tomorrow. Then I lay down on top of the covers and stared at the ceiling. The apartment was quiet except for the TV noise from the living room. I could hear the announcers talking about the game and the crowd cheering. Kevin's life was continuing like normal while mine felt like it was breaking apart. Morning came and I heard Kevin moving around in the kitchen. The smell of coffee drifted into the bedroom. I got up and walked out to find him making eggs at the stove. He smiled when he saw me and asked what I wanted for breakfast. His voice was cheerful like we were starting a regular Saturday. Like yesterday never happened, like we didn't have a massive problem sitting between us. I told him I was going to stay at Renata's for a few days. His smile disappeared. He asked why I would do that. I said I needed space to think about whether this marriage could continue. He put down the spatula and turned to face me completely. His eyes went wide and he asked if I was serious. I told him I was completely serious. He started talking fast then. He said we should discuss this and work it out and not make any big decisions when we were both upset. I reminded him I was the only one upset yesterday. He sat silent while his family attacked me for an hour. He followed me to the bedroom while I pulled out my suitcase. He kept saying we could fix this and it wasn't that bad, and his family didn't mean anything by it. I packed clothes and toiletries while he stood in the doorway. He promised he would talk to them and set boundaries and make sure it never happened again. I stopped packing and looked at him. I asked how many times he had made that exact promise over the past 5 years. He went quiet. I told him this was the same conversation we had after his mother criticized my career choices last year. The same conversation we had after Ashley made fun of my clothes at the family reunion. The same conversation we had after his father said I was too loud at dinner. Every single time he promised things would change, and every single time nothing did. He said this time was different because he understood now how serious it was. I zipped up my suitcase and told him I was exhausted from having this conversation over and over while nothing ever changed. He grabbed my arm gently as I tried to walk past him. He said he loved me and didn't want me to leave. I pulled my arm away and said if he loved me, he would have defended me yesterday. If he loved me, he wouldn't have texted his mother instead of me on the drive home. If he loved me, he wouldn't be acting like everything was fine this morning. He let go, and I walked out of the bedroom with my suitcase. He followed me to the front door, still talking. He said he would do better and be better and prove to me he could change. He said he would call his mother right now and tell her she was wrong. I opened the door and told him I would think about everything while I was at Renata's. He asked how long I would be gone. I said I didn't know yet. Then I left and drove to Renata's apartment across town. She opened the door before I could knock. She must have been watching for me from her window. She took my suitcase and pulled me inside and wrapped me in a hug. I stood there in her arms and finally let myself cry. Everything from yesterday came pouring out. The comments about my smell, Ashley's disgusting bathroom, Kevin's silence, his texts to his mother, his casual breakfast offer this morning. Renata held me and let me sob into her shoulder. When I finally stopped crying, she led me to her couch and made me tea. I told her everything that happened in detail. Every racist comment, every moment Kevin said nothing, every excuse he made this morning. She listened and her face got angrier with each thing I described. When I finished, she said she was furious on my behalf. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. She pointed out this wasn't the first time Kevin chose his family's racism over my dignity. It was just the most obvious example. We sat there while that truth settled over me. She was right. This wasn't new behavior from Kevin. It was just the worst version of behavior he had shown for 5 years. Renata got up and came back with a notebook and pen. She said we should make a list of every time Kevin stayed silent during family racism. I didn't want to at first. Writing it down would make it real and permanent. But she insisted gently. She said I needed to see the pattern clearly. So we started listing incidents. His mother's comment about my food last Thanksgiving. Ashley's joke about my accent at Easter 2 years ago. Richard's statement that I was too sensitive at Christmas 3 years ago. Kevin's aunt asking if I was sure I wanted to wear traditional Indian clothes to the family photo. His mother suggesting I straighten my hair because it would look more professional. Ashley saying my cooking smelled weird when I brought food to a potluck. On and on the list grew. Renata wrote each one down in her neat handwriting. When we finished counting, we had 23 separate times. 23 occasions where someone in Kevin's family said something racist or culturally insensitive, and Kevin either stayed silent or told me later I was overreacting. Seeing it written out like that broke something in me. Each incident alone seemed small enough to excuse, but together they formed a clear picture of a man who would never protect me from his family. Renata put down the pen and asked if I had thought about talking to a lawyer. Just to understand my options, she said. Not to make any decisions yet, but just to know what was possible. I hadn't considered it before that moment. Divorce felt too big and too final. But looking at that list of 23 times made me realize this marriage might already be over. I asked if she knew anyone. She nodded and pulled out her phone. She had a friend who worked in family law named Graham Callahan. She said he was kind and straightforward and would give me honest advice. I took his number and called him right there from Renata's couch. His assistant answered and I explained I needed a consultation. She scheduled me for Monday afternoon. I hung up and felt both relieved and terrified. Talking to a divorce lawyer made everything feel more real. Graham's office was in a tall building downtown with big windows overlooking the city. His assistant led me to a conference room and he came in a few minutes later. He was older with gray hair and a calm expression. He shook my hand and asked me to tell him what brought me in. I went through everything. The Christmas party. Kevin's silence. The 5 years of similar incidents. The list Renata and I made. He listened without interrupting and took notes. When I finished, he looked up at me. He said emotional abuse and failure to protect from family harassment were valid reasons for divorce in our state. He said I wasn't overreacting like Kevin kept suggesting. He explained the process would take several months and we would need to divide assets and handle paperwork. He asked if Kevin and I owned property together. I said no, we rented our apartment. He asked about joint accounts. I said we had one checking account but kept separate savings. He nodded and said that would make things simpler. Then he asked the question I had been avoiding. He asked if I was sure I wanted to proceed with divorce, or if I wanted to try counseling first. I told him I didn't know yet. He said that was okay, and I should take time to think. He gave me his card and said to call when I was ready. I drove back to Renata's feeling drained. She was making dinner when I got there. I told her what Graham said. She asked how I felt about it. I said I felt sad and angry and relieved all at once. Sad that my marriage was ending. Angry that Kevin never defended me. Relieved that maybe I could have a life without constantly defending my right to exist. We ate pasta and watched a movie and didn't talk about Kevin or his family for the rest of the night. 3 days went by at Renata's place. Kevin texted me constantly asking when I was coming home. I didn't respond much. Then on the third evening, someone knocked on Renata's door. She looked through the peephole and turned to me with wide eyes. She said Kevin was outside with flowers. I sighed and told her to let him in. He came inside holding a huge bouquet of roses and a folded letter. He asked if we could talk privately. Renata looked at me and I nodded. She went to her bedroom and closed the door. Kevin sat down across from me and put the flowers on the coffee table. He said he wrote me a letter explaining everything. He handed it to me and I unfolded the pages. His handwriting covered both sides. I read while he sat there watching me. The letter talked about how much he loved me, how he knew he messed up, how he promised to do better going forward, how I needed to understand his family was set in their ways and changing them would take time, how he hoped I could be patient while he worked on setting boundaries. But nowhere in the 3 pages did he actually say what his family did was wrong. Nowhere did he call it racism. Nowhere did he condemn their behavior or take full responsibility for his silence. It was all about him trying harder and me being more understanding. I finished reading and folded the letter back up. I handed it to him and said I would consider marriage counseling, but I was also keeping my consultation with Graham. And he needed to understand I was serious about divorce if things didn't change fundamentally. He agreed immediately. Too fast. Like he was just saying what I wanted to hear. I realized in that moment he thought this was another incident he could smooth over with temporary good behavior. He thought if he was nice for a few weeks, I would come back and everything would return to normal. He didn't understand this was different. This was me actually considering leaving for good. 2 weeks later, we sat in a marriage counselor's office. Kevin had found her online and made the appointment. Her name was Dr. Smith, and she had a small office with comfortable chairs and soft lighting. She asked us each to explain why we were there. Kevin went first. He said we had a disagreement at a family gathering and it got blown out of proportion. He said his family could be difficult sometimes, but they meant well. He said I was very sensitive about cultural issues and sometimes overreacted to things that weren't actually racist. Dr. Smith turned to me and asked for my perspective. I went through what happened at Christmas. The comments about my smell, Ashley's bathroom, Kevin's silence, his texts to his mother, the list of 23 incidents over 5 years. Dr. Smith listened carefully. Then she said something that made Kevin's face change. She said racist attacks from family members were serious forms of emotional abuse. She said a spouse's silence during those attacks enabled the abuse and made the person complicit. She said this wasn't about family dynamics or cultural differences. This was about basic respect and protection. Kevin got defensive immediately. He said maybe we needed a different counselor who understood family loyalty better. Someone who knew that you can't just cut off your family because they say things you don't like. Dr. Smith stayed calm. She said family loyalty didn't mean accepting abuse. She said healthy families could disagree and set boundaries without cutting anyone off. Kevin crossed his arms and said he didn't think this was working. I looked at him and saw clearly that he wasn't here to change. He was here to get validation that I was wrong. When the counselor didn't give him that validation, he wanted to leave. Dr. Smith asked if we wanted to schedule another session. I said yes. Kevin said he would think about it. The next day, Kevin's aunt called me. She asked how I was doing, and I said I was okay. Then she told me something interesting. She said Ashley's bathroom got reported to the health department. Apparently, a neighbor saw the photos when Kevin's aunt shared them in the family group chat. The neighbor got concerned about the mold and called it in. An inspector came out and found multiple code violations: black mold in the walls, improper ventilation, expired products creating health hazards. They had 30 days to fix everything or face fines. Ashley was furious and blaming me for starting all this. But Kevin's aunt said the inspector would have found the problems eventually anyway. She said maybe this would teach Ashley some humility about criticizing other people's hygiene. I thanked her for telling me and we hung up. I felt a small sense of justice knowing Ashley's actual filth was getting addressed. But mostly I just felt tired. Tired of this family and their dysfunction. Tired of fighting to be treated with basic respect. Tired of hoping Kevin would change into someone who actually defended his wife. Kevin called me 3 days after I got the news about Ashley's health department inspection. He didn't ask how I was doing or whether I was okay after everything that happened at Christmas. He just launched right into it, telling me I needed to call Ashley and apologize for causing all this trouble. I sat on Renata's couch holding the phone away from my ear for a second, trying to process what he'd just said. He wanted me to apologize to the woman who spent an hour attacking my race and hygiene in front of his entire family. I told him no, I wasn't apologizing for anything. He started talking faster, saying Ashley was really upset and the whole family was mad at me now. I pointed out that I didn't report her bathroom to anyone. I just took photos to document the truth after she spent an hour calling me dirty. Kevin said it didn't matter because now Ashley had to spend thousands of dollars fixing everything, and it was all because of me. I reminded him that natural consequences weren't my responsibility to fix. If Ashley's bathroom was so disgusting that it violated health codes, that was on her, not on me for documenting her lies. He got quiet for a minute and then asked if I was really going to let this destroy his family relationships over some comments that weren't meant to be hurtful. That's when I knew nothing was going to change. Our fourth counseling session happened 2 weeks later, and it went exactly like the other 3. Kevin sat on one side of the room promising he would try harder to set boundaries with his family. Then the counselor asked him directly if he would defend me at the next family event, and he started hedging. He said he couldn't control what his family said, and I needed to develop thicker skin about cultural differences. The counselor pointed out again that racist attacks weren't cultural differences, they were abuse. Kevin crossed his arms and said maybe his family had a point about some things and we needed to meet in the middle. I looked at him sitting there in his nice shirt and tie, looking reasonable and calm, and I realized he was never going to choose me over them. After the session ended, I sat in my car and called Graham. I told him to start the divorce paperwork. He asked if I was sure, and I said yes. I'd been sure since Christmas. I just needed to stop hoping Kevin would change into someone he wasn't. Kevin got served with the papers at work 3 weeks later. He called me immediately, his voice shaking, asking what I was doing and why I didn't warn him this was coming. I reminded him about all 4 counseling sessions where I said I couldn't stay in a marriage where my husband let his family attack me. He actually sounded shocked, like he thought those were just words I was saying to make a point. He kept saying we could fix this and I just needed to give him more time. I told him he'd had 5 years and I was done waiting. He showed up at Renata's apartment that night with flowers and a card. Renata answered the door and told him I wasn't interested in talking. He tried to push past her and she threatened to call the cops. He finally left the flowers on the doorstep and drove away. The card said he was sorry for not standing up for me sooner, and he understood now how serious this was. But it didn't say anything about his family being wrong, or that their racism was unacceptable. It was just another version of the same apology he'd given me 23 times before. The divorce mediation took place 6 weeks after he got served. We sat in a conference room with a mediator who walked us through dividing everything up. It was straightforward because we didn't have kids and we'd kept our finances mostly separate. Kevin got the apartment because his name was on the lease. I got most of the furniture because I'd bought it. We split the savings account down the middle. The whole thing took 3 hours and felt weirdly businesslike for ending a 5-year marriage. Kevin's mother tried calling me twice during that time, but I sent it to voicemail. After we signed everything, Kevin asked if we could talk privately. I said no. Everything that needed to be said had been said. He looked hurt and told the mediator I was being unreasonable. The mediator just handed him his copies of the paperwork and showed us both out. 6 months after that Christmas party, I moved into my own apartment in a neighborhood I actually liked. It was smaller than the place I'd shared with Kevin, but it was mine. I cooked whatever I wanted, and the whole place smelled like cumin and coriander and turmeric, without anyone complaining. I hung up photos of my family and bought colorful blankets and pillows that Kevin would have said were too ethnic. Renata helped me move in, and we ordered Indian food for dinner, eating it straight from the containers while sitting on my new couch. Kevin signed the final divorce papers the week before, and his lawyer sent them to Graham, who sent them to me. I looked at Kevin's signature on the document and felt sad for a minute. Not because I wanted him back, but because the marriage I thought I had never actually existed. I'd spent 5 years thinking he would eventually stand up for me, and he'd spent 5 years thinking I would eventually accept being treated like garbage. We were both wrong about each other. But now I was free to live without constantly defending my right to basic human dignity, and that felt better than staying in a marriage where I had to fight for respect every single day.